Good afternoon. Let me introduce to you Lear Corporation. This is not the private jet company. This is the premier automotive seating business in North America. Brief thesis. Lear is a deeply misunderstood industrial business. The business model has changed dramatically in 5 years, making the earnings power and the earnings quality much higher than they were. This has not been recognized by the market yet. There are several automotive consumer trends which play directly into Lear's favor. And looking further out, mega trends such as driverless cars and e-vehicles are an even bigger tailwind for growth. Most importantly for us at Paradise, Lear trades at a very compelling valuation. The biggest segment in Lear Corporation is seating components. Globally, car seats is roughly an $80 billion per annum industry. Lear is a top 3 player in the world, the biggest player in the USA, and importantly, is the biggest player in the luxury market. With blue chip clients like General Motors and Ford and Fiat in Europe. Car seats are generally designed into a vehicle for about 5 to 7 years, giving Lear Corporation very long visibility and high returns on invested capital in this segment. Interestingly, with car seats, they're a critical part of the safety of the vehicle, yet they only make up about 2% of the cost, meaning manufacturers are very unlikely to switch out because the risks are high and the benefits are very low to profit and loss. This creates a very sticky revenue stream for car seat manufacturers. Pictured here is the American dream, the Ford F-250. The Ford F-Series is the highest selling vehicle in the USA, and this trend to larger SUVs and four-wheel drives is a global phenomenon. It's happening in every one of Lear Corporation's end markets. It's important to note this because SUVs have larger, more comfortable, more featured seats, and Lear can generate 30 to 40% more revenue from a SUV versus a family sedan. That luxury market share of 40% globally is critical to understand given they have such a higher margin profile than their peers in seats. On our numbers, we have Lear growing at least 2 times the rate of the global automotive industry. I'm not going to bore you any longer about car seats, but it is a fantastic business, I assure you. The other division which is misunderstood by the stock market is electronic systems or E-systems. This image here shows the electronic architecture of a typical SUV. As you can see in the image, it's roughly every part of the car these days has some form of electronics. Lear is the only supplier with what's called full electronic architecture. Now, what does that mean? It means from the design, implementation, manufacture, and installation, Lear Corporation can do all that, and they are the only Tier 1 supplier in the world that can do this. This is a very important part of the Lear story because they get an insight into what automotive manufacturers are doing and planning to do 5, 7, and 10 years from now, and they are the only player that gets to see that with such a huge advance and invest accordingly. This segment now is 34% of the Lear Corporation business, having grown from a very small segment several years ago. This is the jewel in the crown, which we believe is misunderstood by the stock market. So is it a seat manufacturer or is it a technology business? Today it's a seat manufacturer. By 2023, most of the profits will come from technology and electronics. That fully integrated architecture creates a significant network effect, and we see looking out that there will be a couple of key players that win the battle for electronics in automotives, Lear Corporation being one of them. It's a proven innovator. We're the first company to produce an onboard car charger, which is one of the huge problems with range anxiety in electronic vehicles. So the Chevy Volt has an onboard battery that can charge while the car is driving. We expect over time that the value of this segment will be recognized by the company, by the market. Looking at a couple of bigger trends, e-vehicles. Today there's 6 million globally of either hybrid or electronic vehicles, expected to grow 500% to 30 million vehicles by 2023. So market growth is 5x. Within electronic vehicles, and Lear being a market leader in electronics, the complexity and the amount of product that Lear can sell into vehicles is also growing 5 times. There's high voltage and low voltage cabling, there's transistors, there's technology, there's connectivity, Wi-Fi. E-vehicles have a lot more technology embedded than traditional vehicles, and Lear Corporation stands to be the leader in pushing more product into these. Driverless cars, as we look out a little beyond 2023, think of your inside of your car, once you take out the driving function, being more like the inside of your living room. This is where the two segments of Lear Corporation, seats and electronics, come together. Larger seats, more comfortable seats, more screens in a vehicle. Again, I've mentioned Wi-Fi and technology, surround sound embedded into seats. On a longer term trend, there is more content to be sold by Lear into manufacturers. This image here is a product in pilot mode where you can change the configuration of your vehicle using an app, the Lear Corporation app on your phone. There's also several safety components with multi-directional travel, which Lear are at the forefront of producing. And the fun stuff for value investors, allocation of capital. The last 5 years have been nearly perfect. 94% of profit has turned into cash flow compared to 60% for the industry. Lear has bought back 40% of the company in the last 5 years and has acquired well in various parts of the world. So what's it worth? Industrials with high return on invested capital typically trade at 16 to 25 times earnings depending on the market. The segment with the E-systems is difficult to model. We haven't even bothered modeling the blue sky opportunities in driverless and E, but there's a recent spin-off from a company called Delphi Technologies suggests that it's worth at least 17 times earnings, and a strong management team is always worth paying a premium for. So Lear Corporation, as we speak today, is for sale on the New York Stock Exchange for 7 times earnings. A slight slowdown in China, some slowdown in Europe because of some Dieselgate with our friends at Volkswagen has meant the global automotive supply chain is sold off. Lear Corporation has not been immune to this and is sold off at the same time. At 7 times earnings, you're getting E-systems for 15 times and you're getting car seats for 3 times earnings. In the next 5 years, Lear Corporation will generate $8.6 billion in cash flow. To frame that, the current market cap is a little under $9 billion. If you're planning on buying Lear Corporation shares, I suspect you get ahead of the massive share buyback program, which is to be announced shortly. I've been Paul Mason. Thanks for listening.